Hey, Brady, what are the Cowboys waiting for? Why are they keeping Jason Garrett around?
That's a great question. And with the words of Jerry Jones today, or I should say yesterday, because when this podcast is hitting, Jerry Jones thinks he's going to be coaching the NFL next year. Didn't say necessarily with the Dallas Cowboys. So that was kind of interesting. Like, it's to the point where, are we looking at Jerry Jones he's like having senior moments? Is that what this is? Like when he's 77, you guys tell me, like, is he so old now to the point where like, does Jerry Jones know what he's saying, or is he being so calculated where he's actually complimenting Jason Garrett, but at the same time basically saying like, yeah, we're going to fire him, but I'm pretty sure someone else is going to hire him?
Go ahead,
I don't know if you're. Yeah, I think I think Jerry Jones was answering the question in a way that was basically like, look, you guys know I'm firing him. As in Ryan's words, I'm madder than a box of frogs. I'm going to fire this coach unless he wins the Super Bowl. I told everybody that. And if he doesn't, he's gonna go work for the Giants. I know he's going to work. Jason's a great man, a great person. He's been great with the Giants. I think he will kill it in New York, and I think they should hire him right now. Right dang now. I don't know. Jerry,
but here, let me ask Brady this, because we talked about it on the podcast earlier. Do you think, and I'm convinced, I think Brinson is too, Jerry Jones needs a coach that he can manage? Like Jimmy Johnson didn't work out. Jimmy Johnson won all those football games, but he wouldn't let Jerry Jones take the credit, and that was a huge issue 20 years later. So I don't know who the patsy's going to be after Jason Garrett robot walks his way out of the building for the last time, but I think they're not going to get the best coach possible just because of Jerry Jones' ego.
That's going to be one of the hurdles. I think if you're looking at that job, that's probably the only thing you're saying is going to be the reason why you wouldn't take that job. I think most head coaching candidates will look at it and say, it's the Dallas Cowboys. It's the most valued franchise there is in professional sports. They've got a lot of good young pieces there. It's a good roster. You can win. And look how bad the rest of the NFC East is this year. Like, not only can you win with the talent they have, you can maybe win for a sustained period of time with some of those young pieces that you have in place. So there's a lot of enticing things. You know, they're going to be able to pay you a bunch. You have access to so much. But you got to deal with Jerry. You know, it's like you got to deal with the patriarch. You know, it's like if you watch the show Succession, it's like, yeah, you got to deal with the crazy dad who like built the whole thing, and you have to figure out how to somehow still make it work. Like, is that worth it? I don't know. I think for some head coaching candidates, it will be, just to have a shot at it. I mean, it's one of those jobs that you can't turn it down if it's offered to you, right? Like, I don't care who you are. If I'm the Dallas Cowboys, and again, it's the Dallas Cowboys, like, I would go after Bill Belichick. I would go after Nick Saban. I would go after, Urban Meyer. Whoever I could, I would go after them all. Like, whoever I feel like the best head coaches are at whatever level that I feel like could help me win a Super Bowl, I would go after them, because I am the Dallas Cowboys. I'm Jerry Jones. And look, they can think whatever they want, or you can think whatever you want of Jerry Jones, because whoever gets the credit, however it works, he supplies his coaches, his players with everything they need. You go see their facilities. You go see everything those guys get. He gets them everything they need. So as much as we view that as a negative or as a con when weighing the pros and cons of this, I still don't think it overshadows just how big that star really is there in Dallas.
Hey, by the way, Brinson?
Yeah.
Following up on Brady, I think that Jason Garrett is 100% Kendall Roy. Just a beaten down man that wants to get out.
That's why we kind of brought it up. Like, that was the first thing that came to mind. Just kind of like at this point, he's there. Like, Shiv's going to take over, right? Like, we or at least we think that. We don't really know, but Shiv's eventually going to take over. Who's Shiv? That's what we got to figure out. Who is Shiv? Who's going to take over next?
Charlotte, right? Could literally be Jerry Jones' dog.
Shiv is Lincoln Riley. You think Lincoln would leave the Cowboys job? See, that's different. Like, trying to get Dabo to Clemson for the Panthers job is different than trying to get, like,
well, yeah, like, throw Dabo into the conversation for the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, like, let's be honest. Like, again, like, it's the one job where if you're offered it, like, how could you be like, yeah, Jerry Jones came to me, offered me the Dallas Cowboys job, head coaching job, and I turned it down. Like, I have no coaching experience. If he like was crazy enough to come ask me, I'd be like, yeah, dude, okay. Like,
so would I.
Anyone would. Like, it's like, who would turn that job down? Like, you're gonna have a hard time. You have a hard time losing games there sometimes, considering the talent that they have. And again, it's a great job. So Dallas is an awesome city. It's like, it seems like a no-brainer. So I think there's so many more pros that outweigh whatever comes along with Jerry Jones. And, I just think at that point, if that's the worst thing, then there's like worse things you'd have to deal with. And especially in comparison to another franchise in the Washington Redskins who have fired their head coach and have an owner in Daniel Snyder who seems like he's much more problematic to deal with.
Well, you mentioned Urban Meyer for the Panthers job. What about Urban Meyer for the Cowboys job?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one that if he was offered it, it'd be, again, hard for him to turn down or anyone else to turn down. And look, he's arguably one of the greatest college football coaches of all time. Like, maybe you want to, test it out, see how things would work there. You look at Dak Prescott during his success at Mississippi State. He was with Dan Mullen.
Yep.
Dan Mullen, was with Urban Meyer, at Florida with Tim Tebow. So there's some connections where he obviously would know the personnel and, you'd have to assemble a staff and all that. But no, I think he'd be another guy that would be a great fit. He's a winner. He's a leader. He's a motivator. And so I think, again, I don't know. We haven't talked about it. But I would imagine that, he'd look in and say like, yeah, it's the Dallas Cowboys. How can you turn that job down?
Hey, Brady, during the Fox telecast last week, I think the pregame show I was watching, and I think it was either last week or the week before, Urban was talking about when he was coaching, he would actually stand across from the other team's head coach on special teams plays just to see if something was going to happen. And that's sort of a revelation for fans and people who don't follow these things super closely. And I thought that was interesting. And that led me to wonder, do you think Jason Garrett does things like that? Because we crush Jason Garrett all the time for not doing anything. We don't know if his headset works. We joke about that every week. But is he not doing the little things like that? Because it doesn't appear that he is. And coaches that seem not to have much success don't appear. Like Freddie Kitchens, I can guarantee you, doesn't even know where the other team's coach is on the other side of the field. But do you think that Jason Garrett's actually doing these things and he's just having terrible luck?
Yeah, it's hard to tell. I mean, I haven't studied Jason Garrett enough as a head coach to really know. I would say this. I mean, in the context of that conversation, Urban was talking about how when you've got a head coach who handles one side of the football versus the other, typically when there is something that's happening on special teams, whether it's a fake or a surprise onside, for example, that coach is going to naturally pay attention because he's got to actually then call the plays for the offense, for example, if they recover the surprise onside or if the fake is successful. So, typically they're going to be out there watching to kind of pay attention when usually they aren't, right? Usually they're over by the bench talking to the quarterback, talking to the offensive players or defensive players to go over adjustments for the next drive. And so that's something that, Urban talked about or alluded to. They connected it back to Bill Belichick during the Super Bowl this past year, asking where McVay was. Where's McVay? Where's McVay? Where's McVay? Because McVay probably is going to be standing somewhere to watch if they're able to do something on special teams. Now, and you got to think, too, it's kind of like a self-scout thing. I mean, with the Rams, they have Johnny Hekker. Johnny Hecker's a hell of a passer as a punter, so they can run a fake whenever they want and probably be pretty successful with it because of Hecker's ability as a punter or really even a holder at that point or for that matter. So it was just one of those things, like one of those little insights that I think head coaches can give when they're a head coach and they're not calling plays on one side or the other. That's, I think, one of the advantages, by the way, too, when we look at who these teams hire as head coaches. What kind of head coach are they going to be? Are they going to be a guy who manages it all? Like, for example, arguably right now you'd say the Baltimore Ravens are the best team in football. That's what John Harbaugh does. He oversees the whole thing. He manages it. He's got Greg Roman on one side, Don Martindale on the other, and he just kind of manages those situations. And granted, he comes from a special teams background, as did Urban Meyer. And as far as, coaching that side, one of those three phases. So, he can kind of speak to that. So it's just one of those little tells and things that I think the best always have those little nuggets, those little secrets and things that they look for in the game. And it kind of separates them maybe from some of the others that don't have quite as much success or as much experience doing it.